In this episode of the Triangular Compass podcast, we're inviting you into a conversation unlike anything you have ever seen. A rare and profound dialogue between three practitioners from three distinct and ancient lineages, each carrying the wisdom of their respective medicines. This is more than just a discussion about ayahuasca, yahe, and peyote. It is an extraordinary opportunity to witness these practitioners explore the differences in their traditions while uncovering the common threads that unite them. We are honored to host ayahuasca practitioner Justin Zachariewicz, whose lineage is rooted in the sacred traditions of Peru. Spiritual guide Carlos Duran, whose Columbian lineage descends from the Incans who fled north ahead of the conquistadors, preserving their deep connection to yahe, the Columbian version of ayahuasca. And finally, Oglala Lakota ceremonial practitioner Jay Garnette, a Sundance chief from the Pine Ridge Reservation, who carries forward the spiritual practices of his people, including peyote and the Inipi Sweat Lodge. Together, these men represent healing practices that span thousands of years in the diverse landscapes of South and North America, from the Andes Mountains to the Great Plains. For veterans, first responders, and others navigating trauma, these modalities offer a path to healing that goes beyond masking symptoms. It's about addressing the root causes and reconnecting with the mind, the body, and the spirit. At the Grunstyle Foundation, we have seen the limitations of conventional pharmaceuticals firsthand. Plant medicines, guided by skilled practitioners, offer a deeply transformative alternative. This episode also features personal testimony from Grunstyle's own Tim Jensen, who shares his own journey with these therapies and the life-changing impact that they have had. It's a conversation that challenges stigma, opens minds, and provides a rare glimpse into the power and potential of these ancient practices. It's a chance to learn, to reflect, and to explore the possibilities of healing through the wisdom of Mother Earth. This fascinating journey of healing and transformation starts right now. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Triangular Compass. I am the host for today, Will Wisner. I'm the Executive Director for the Grunstyle Foundation, and joining me, as always, is my good friend and boss, President of the Board of Directors for the Foundation and co-owner of Grunstyle, Mr. Tim Jensen. How you doing, brother?
Another day in paradise, my friend. Another day.
Another day. And also joining us today, we have two really incredible guests for our first segment in today's very special podcast. Joining me here to my right, near the front of the table, is my good friend Justin Zachariewicz. He goes by Jay-Z. And Justin works with ayahuasca in the Peruvian lineage tradition of that work. And also to my right at the back side of the table is my other good friend and brother, Mr. Jay Garnette, who is, how would you describe yourself? You're a medicine man, a Sundance chief? What's the right term?
I identify as Oglala Lakota ceremonial practitioner.
All right. What's your pronouns?
So he... him.
All right.
So that's my title I gave myself.
Oh, okay. Well, we will honor it. I'm going to shorten that down to
just
Jay.
Yeah, Jay.
My brother Jay. All right.
Happy to be here.
Thanks, Jay. Jay-Z. We're going to make sure the Jay-Z to keep that a little less confusing
Jay-Z,
for today's discussion.
JG.
There you go.
Jay-Z.
JG. So what we're going to be doing in this first part of the segment today is we're going to be talking about the work that is going on in many places across the world through this work with plant medicines. And we were going to focus in on some of the specifics of the work that this group has done together in efforts to bring some peace and some healing to folks that are dealing with some significant traumas in their life. These are both veterans and non-veterans. Primary our focus of work is definitely on the veterans, but there's need for everybody. This is not something that is exclusive only to the veteran community. So welcome everybody.
Thank you.
Glad to have you guys. I want to start off, Tim, with you to kind of set the tables. I know your time is limited and you've got a plane to catch, and so we're going to try to get as much time for you as we can. How did you come into this world, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, I think it's been an interesting journey, right? I've had a relationship with medicine before I even thought it was medicine, right? It's more of a recreational relationship with LSD and mushrooms back in my teenage years. I look back at that and I'm like, oh man, I probably abused that stuff back then. But I think that was my very first handshake with it was in my teenage years. But it wasn't really until my mid 40s that I had a respectful and a much different relationship with the medicine or with the plants. And it really started when the fall of Afghanistan happened, which was peculiar to me because I wasn't an Afghan veteran. I didn't fight that war. I fought in Iraq, right? And much different paradigm, much different environment. It was completely two separate wars. But the end result was the same. We were fighting terrorism. What I started really recognizing was that all these memories and things that were bubbling to the surface were, parts that I had suppressed from my own deployment, right? And I think we're coming to the surface because I was watching all of these Afghan veterans, really becoming troubled with what they were sawing. The fall of Kabul, the dramatic flights out, falling people, watching people fall and hanging on aircraft as it's taking off and taxiing out of Kabul. That was KIA. That was absolutely unbelievable.
What was it all for?
What was it for? Right, the last 20 plus years. What was that for? And it was breaking a lot of people. And I think that empathy that I was exhibiting or experiencing was really like weighing down on me, bringing all this repressed stuff up that I thought I had managed out years ago. And I felt that I was, those once familiar suicidal ideations were coming back, and I didn't know what to do. Right? I knew that I didn't want to spin down that hole again because I've already been there once, and I lost everything, and I would never ever do anything to get myself back into that place. So, I needed to start doing something, and I didn't know really what that was going to be. I started, with a microdosing moment that a friend had shared with me, and that gave me an experience, but it wasn't a profound experience. It gave me like, okay, there's an opportunity here, and then it was you, right? It was the relationship that you and I had created. That you're like, we need to go down south and figure this out. And you and I went, had a 3-day experience with ayahuasca, and it changed everything for me. You remember I walked out of the first night saying, I was just sat with my best friend that's been gone since 2012, and like that was the most profound and enlightening and soul relieving conversation I've ever had with anybody alive or dead. And it put me on a path. It put me on a path that here I am in 2025 as somebody that's searching to bring more people to this medicine, as somebody that's trying to put an end to the trauma, the sadness, all the things that are afflicting our veteran community. 156,000 veterans have killed themselves over the last 20 years, man. You know that as well as I do. And there are better ways than what we are currently doing to treat this epidemic. And I don't believe that it is through big pharma. I believe that, we have some opportunities right in front of us today, that are better than anything that's in the market right now. We hear a lot in these conversations about evidence-based therapies. I give two shits about evidence-based therapies, right? Because we've been using evidence-based therapies for the last 20 years, and what has it gotten us?
Absolutely nothing.
Absolutely
nothing. A lot of more dead guys and gals.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So this kind of work, this is not our primary drive by any stretch at the foundation, but it is something that we're very passionate about because damn near everybody in the foundation is that broken toy coming out of the military and has had that same experience and felt that same hollowness and sadness, from things like Afghanistan and their time in the war. And we've all kind of gone down that medicine path on our own in our own ways and found our own ways to the medicine and to this type of healing. So it is an important part of what it is that we do. Now, we do not run a retreat center, or we're not necessarily providing massive amounts of scholarships to try to get people down south, to people like our friend Carlos Duran, who will be joining us in segment 2 after you depart. But I think we're having a good impact. Do you mind speaking a little bit about that, how we see it through our eyes and what the nature of our work is that we do?
Yeah. I mean, we this is hard work, man. It really is. I never thought I would be doing 501c3 stuff, right? When I came into Grunt Style, I was folding T-shirts. I was in transition. I had a couple businesses of my own that weren't really doing anything, and my wife's like, "You need to get a real job." And I'm like, "Oh God, this is a real job. What are you talking about?" She's like, "Well, it doesn't pay, Tim. You need to find something that pays." So that started my time at Grunt Style. And through all of that time, what I have really come to recognize is that when you put veterans in a space together, something magical happens. Like, there's a connection and a forging of a relationship that you cannot stand in between. And I'll use an example. Early in the days of Grunt Style, when we were doing a lot of production in a very small facility, we had a lot of veterans that were from the war that were struggling, and there wasn't a day that would go by that an individual would come into my office and break down to some reasonable degree in tears, and saying that they couldn't manage through the day because of X, Y, and Z. And they came to me because I had that experience, the same shared experience that they had, from my combat time. And I would sit with them, and I'd talk them off the ledge, and and get them back into a position that they would either go home or they can finish their day, whatever the case may be. But what we learned from that was it wasn't just periodical. Like I said, it was almost happening daily, and production was being our business was being afflicted by it. So what we did then was is something as easy as what we could do today, right? Is just put reasonable solutions in place that have massive impacts. We don't need to do a lot of research. We don't need to do a lot of data mining, right? We just go back to what works. In that particular circumstance, we started pairing up combat individuals with other combat individuals and putting them together on machines. What started happening? Well, they started talking. They started sharing their experiences. They started laughing about those experiences and really having a great connection. And we saw their personalities rise up. And I started to see less people coming into my office and trying to bend my ear or get me to talk them off a ledge or whatever the case may be. All that behavior started going away. So fast forward to where we are today with our foundation, right? Our foundation exists because there are problems within the community that nobody is addressing. Food insecurity. Why the hell is anybody in active duty with a family on food stamps? Blows my mind. Unacceptable, and period. Like that's unacceptable. Toxic exposure, right? The work that we did with the PACT Act, we talk about that a lot, but it's not really what the PACT Act is. It is what we were addressing within our community was the exotic cancers that were destroying us, and still are to this day, destroying us. And we said, no. That's enough. And you and Rosie Torres were far further down that path when you brought me on, and we finished that shit.
Absolutely,
we brought it across the finish line. And what stemmed from that work is understanding toxicity and how toxicity plays into some majority of the circumstances that are afflicting a veteran today, from their mental health to their physical health, to their relationships and how they are engaging with their loved ones. If we can address those areas, which we are doing through the work of, something as simple as food insecurity, right? We are putting on these food drops at places where we have no high concentrations of families that need this work, and we were giving them $500 worth of groceries and household needs to put $500 cash that they have that they would have spent into something more beneficial for that family.
And a lot of these people are robbing Peter to pay Paul. I mean,
Yes.
You are skipping a bill this month to pay the bill that you didn't pay last month just so you don't have your car repossessed. Or,
Absolutely.
So
Right.
it's gross.
from toxic exposure, right? We understand that if you reduce inflammation, you reduce pain. By reducing pain, you reduce the individual's likelihood of using a painkiller or some sort of opioid that would lead to an addiction that ultimately leads to death or despair, right? So with all that information, we started treating individuals with hyperbaric chambers, reducing inflammation. Reduce inflammation in the body, add high concentrations of pressurized oxygen into your blood system that is pushing into the furthest extents of your body and capillaries into your brain and recreating neuroregenesis and gray brain matter regenesis. Like, those things are incredible, right? And those are having real time effects on the veteran and individuals that are not of the veteran status. And I'll point back to 2025's North Carolina HBOT study that was just recently released. They had 144 individuals that went through their program, and they measured this over the course of 3 years. And they found exactly what we found. Reduce inflammation, you reduce pain. Reduce pain, you reduce addiction. And reducing addiction, you reduce suicide. And the number that they came back, which I think is absolutely interesting and something that we need to be standing from the rooftops and saying, VA, this is a proven solution. You talk about evidence-based practicalities. Here it is right here. That report showed that all 144 of those individuals showed a 57% reduction in suicidal ideation. So but the VA does not want to write scripts or allow anybody access to hyperbaric chambers that they have in facilities across the country, right? And they'll go a step further, right? And let me explain that. Dr. Robert Beckman, one of the premier hyperbaric oxygen therapy doctors in the country. He's an advisor on the Grunstyle Board of Directors, as you know. He shared with us in one of our X spaces. If you're not listening to that, you should get on X and look at Mr. Wisner's or my personal page, and you can find out where to listen to that, or even the Grunstyle Foundation. But what we learned from that was nearly 1 million veterans have been killed. I don't say die, because you don't die in the VA. You get killed in the VA. They were killed in the VA because they were not given access to hyperbaric oxygen therapy for diabetic foot ulcers.
Yeah, which is absolutely crazy, because really what hyperbaric oxygen chambers do, in part, or one of the many things they do and good benefits, is they regrow soft tissue. These diabetic foot ulcers, this hyperbaric can regrow that tissue. My father had a decrepitous ulcer that formed on his big toe. Yeah. And, the conventional treatment, he wasn't using hyperbaric, but, he ended up having his toe amputated, and luckily it wasn't further back up where there was an amputation that was required higher up, because, is what you're alluding to here, the prognosis there on post amputation, the life expectancy is about 3 to 5 years. Yeah. So that's damn near a death sentence when you have that, and they do have these modalities that are readily available. So that's something that we're working on and trying to address. And I think there's momentum behind that. I think it's moving in positive ways. But today we're here to talk about something that's a little bit outside of the scope of even these things that are accessible within the VA system, and that we are wanting to raise awareness of. Yeah. The whole point of the Triangular Compass is we are mind, body, and spirit healing. That's what we are trying to do. And so through the toxicity, we are addressing the body and to heal it. When we're dealing with issues of the mind, and by that I'm specifically referring to like CTE. Mm-hmm. So many of us have been blown up in IEDs and rocket attacks and mortars, and every time you pull a trigger on a rifle, you're getting that little micro concussion right there in the center of your forehead. We're healing that. Hyperbaric will heal that as well. After your body is starting to do that healing, how do you address the spirit? Because that is such a personal thing, and that's what I want to talk about today. And I'm hoping that you, because I want to give you as much time as I can, because I know your time's limited here before we move on with the guests. But would you mind explaining, kind of that mystical side of that experience you had that first time you connected with ayahuasca?
Yeah. It was, I didn't know what I was really getting myself into, right? I give me a moment.
And if you don't want to talk about it, that's perfectly fine.
No,
I'll put
no,
you on the spot a little bit with that. But
a lot of emotion is coming back through. But I think that very first night that I sat, it was terrifying. It was the most incredible thing that I've experienced. I really got to sit with myself, and that's hard to say, because what does that really mean? Well, I sit with myself all the time. I can be alone. I can do this. I can do that. I can meditate. Blah 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 blah. Well, that's not sitting with yourself, right? That's not sitting in a moment where every part of your body is telling you to get up and run, but you have to stay still. You have to be put, and you have to hold yourself into this position of saying, the only way out is through. The only way out is through. And I have to face everything that is in front of me and get through this. And if I have to white knuckle my way through that, then I'm going to white knuckle my way through that. If I need to, get breathing and look like a fool because I'm trying to ground myself, then that's what's needed to be done. But for that experience, I met myself, and that person stood in front of me. And I hated everything that I saw in that person. Because what I've built, what that person represented was my ego. And that ego had built a significant armor around himself to protect me, Tim, from the things in my head, from all the things that were deep inside of me. It was protecting me from all of those things. So I had to build this sense of armor around myself that I can get through the day and just be the Tim that everybody wanted Tim to be. That wasn't who I wanted to be. Right? I've said several times over the course of my life that the Tim that went to Iraq, there's several instances of Tim. There's the Tim that joined the Marine Corps. There's the Tim that went to Iraq. There's the Tim that died in Iraq. And then there's the Tim that came back, and then there's Tim today. The Tim today is the best Tim that ever lived. The Tim today has the most empathy and the most love to share with people that none of those other iterations of Tim ever knew, because that armor was burdening him in a way that he was not able to see those things and not able to participate in it and not even to acknowledge that love existed, because that person was hurt by a lot of different people in a lot of different circumstances, and that armor was necessary to survive. When I stood in front of that image and all that was messaged to me and downloaded to me, and I said to myself, I don't have to be this guy. I can be whoever I want to be. And I shattered that image in front of me into a million pieces and watched it flow away. And I believe you were standing there when that happened, and you saw me collapse to the ground.
I thought you were going to punch me, actually, as I was trying to catch you. So I was actually quite scared at that moment. Yes.
And from that point further, I truly understand what this medicine can do for me, mm-hmm. and what it can do for other people, and what it can do for the individual that is just struggling to find themselves. And that's, listen, we're in the veteran community. These are not sexy things to talk about, like inner feelings, and that sounds like woke shit and all the other stuff. But like, my friends, like, we are human before we are anything else. And if we do not recognize that, and we do not acknowledge that, and if we do not acknowledge the fact that we have feelings, that we can be hurt, and that hurt can cause long-standing trauma that creates behaviors that are absolutely destructive and emulsive, then what are we doing? We are not living to our full potential, and we are putting on a mask, and we're creating that armor, and we're walking through life not accomplishing anything. And what we are here to do on this planet is to have an experience. And that experience is the love, the joy, the anger, the pain. We're supposed to experience it all. And then when we leave this place, all that experience gets put back into the consciousness of space and time. That's what I believe, and that's what the medicine has told me. The medicine has also told me what my part is in all of this, and how you and I are on this path together, and Jalen, and Justin, and all the people in the background here. This is the most important thing that I've ever done. You know, it's I've seen it save my wife. It saved my wife, man. It saved my life. And to me, I will be forever indebted to the spirits for that, and I will play my part in bringing more people to this medicine. Even though it's not a core principle of what we do here through a foundation, you won't find anything about it anywhere what we do other than the things that we talk about. But it is absolutely the most important thing that deserves my attention.
And you know, you're talking about all of the realizations and the insights and your understanding and this philosophical, beautiful testimony that you just offered. And there's also this inexplicable, spiritual, mystical experience that is also occurring while you're also receiving these enlightenments. Mm-hmm. And I know, I understand that, you'd conveyed to me once that, during that first night, you'd spent a lot of time with a dear friend of yours that did not make it home or has passed, and that was very profound to you. So thank you very much, Tim, for sharing all of that. Thanks for setting the table for our next segment. When we come back after commercial, I want to turn it over to you, gentlemen, and see if you can help those tuning in today make a little more sense than some of what to take away from these incredible stories and experiences that not just veterans, but a lot of seekers across the world now at this point have come to understand from these incredible medicines from both South America and here in North America. And we're going to get into that. And our friend Carlos Duran will be joining the conversation and filling Tim's chair. So look very much forward to that. Tim, thank you much, brother, for being here and making the trip up to St. Louis and to have this conversation with us today. I love you, brother. Your heart's big and pure in my eyes. I'll follow you anywhere, man. So we'll see you right after this.
The most valuable asset in the United States military is the men and women. It's not the hardware, it's not the defense contractor, it's the men and women.
17,000 signatures. We're gonna take that right upstairs, drop it off on the senator's desk, and ask him, more likely demand, that he signs this bill.
This is some of the greatest minds in the planet, right? And we're thinking, and it's a wise idea to put a birthing area next to a trash heap that's on fire. We've built something incredible, and it's time to use what we have here for good. And let's be good humans, and let's raise our community up and really put a focus on our community that has been often overlooked. And it's time to celebrate who we are. It's time to celebrate what we've contributed to this country.
We service members, veterans, and their families in all things mental health and wellness, transition and sustainment, and food insecurities.
It's time to celebrate the 20 years of the American warfighter that has done the impossible.
You go fight your wars because you don't know how to handle it, and you walk away. Well, this is the country we're fighting for. We heard it. Why don't you come over and fight with us?
And welcome back, everybody. Our friend Tim Jensen has departed, and filling the seat over here, we're bringing to the conversation my good friend and brother, Mr. Carlos Duran. Thank you, Carlos, for joining the conversation today. It's a pleasure, as always, to see you, and it makes my heart happy to be anywhere near your presence, man. You just speak to me in a lot of ways, brother.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. Big chair to fill in Tim's absence, but I'll do my best.
Oh, I'm sure you'll hold your own just fine, brother. Also joining us today is Justin Zachariewicz, and my other good friend and brother, Mr. Jay Garnette, and we are picking up this conversation on plant medicines and the work of spirituality and the role that it plays in our triangular compass philosophy and way of looking at life on healing mind, body, and spirit, or body, soul, and spirit. Lots of ways to kind of skin that cat, I guess, in lots of ways. Many paths up the mountain, as I'm sure we'll probably be talking. It's kind of the theme for today, is the many paths up the mountain. And the why this is such a special conversation is that the fine folks that are joining us today on the podcast are all medicine carriers from their own lineages and different traditions. And to set the stage, Carlos works with the Columbian version of ayahuasca, and I preference it that way just to make sure that those listening that may have heard that term ayahuasca, it's a lot more widely understood than the actual formal name of Yahe. So Carlos has been doing that work for quite a while with his relatives and friends and family down in Colombia. That we took a group of Canadian and American veterans down to Colombia back last year, and so had a chance to experience the incredible program that you all offer down there in the Amazon with working with Yahe. And we have Justin, Jay, who also works with ayahuasca, but from a Peruvian tradition. So it'll be very interesting to do a little digging to find some differences between those two traditions, and hopefully what will emerge is some of the really neat commonalities that are between those practices. And then I think the really interesting flavor on the dish today is my good friend Jay Garnette, who works in plant medicine space and spirituality and is a servant of the people of Pine Ridge, South Dakota, up with the Lakota up there. So Jalen works, there's a long tradition up there with plant medicines with peyote. And we'll talk and work into that. And Jalen just recently joined us on a trip down south to set with Justin and his amazing traditions. And so I'm very interested to see what commonalities that you found as the work that you've done since you were a little guy learning about this space. So I'd like to start off today with Justin. So Justin, before we went to break, we'll listen to Tim talk about the healing that he found on his personal journey. And this work is very hard to describe and to put into words. And I think Tim did a really killer job kind of conveying the essence of that. And there's a lot of ways that can be explained. These experiences are as unique as an individual fingerprint for every person that encounters this type of work and this medicine. But I would be very curious to hear how your lineage kind of puts this into context and kind of explains it. And then we'll just kind of open up the discussion and just listen to you guys riff. And I'll sit back and let the masters talk. And I'm sure we'll all learn a little something. So, Justin, what is going on with this stuff?
Great. Like you said, it's very individual. And there are many flavors of experience. I think Tim's share was really beautiful, and it is one of the archetypical experiences that can happen in this space, that people have interactions with relatives maybe or friends that have passed over. And just to speak a little bit on Tim's share, that it's possible that those are genuine interactions with spirits that have crossed over, or it's also possible that those are interactions with our own subconscious, with parts of ourselves that hold grief around the loss. And I think both are equally valuable, and I think that they're both just as likely to be objectively true. I don't think anybody can say definitively what happens inside the great mystery of life and with engaging with these practices. In our tradition, our teachers kind of say that there's kind of three archetypes of experience that we can have within the space of the journey itself. And there's a couple of different ways of looking at that. The kind of the Western mindset that we've adopted is that there's hospital, there's school, and there's church.
Right.
And those are, you can kind of have one of each of those experiences throughout the night. or throughout an experience, throughout a journey, or there can be a predominant overtone. And nobody really wants to be in the hospital, but sometimes you got to be in the hospital. Sometimes you need some work done. And oftentimes we find ourselves in school learning lessons about our own life, and having reflections on things that maybe are coming up that are challenges for us, getting direction. And sometimes it's a church experience where it's very, very blissful and beautiful, and we're touching the higher realms and touching our higher spirit. And I think all of these things play a role. The healing space is very nonlinear, and I think a lot of the times we have these expectations of what our own trajectory should look like, and Great Spirit, God, Creator, that source of power has its own idea and its own path that's oftentimes different than how we expect and how we look. So tempering our expectations of our own timeline for our own journey, our own healing, is really an integral part of that process.
Absolutely. And it seems like sometimes my experience has been that most often I tend to go spend some time in the hospital almost every time. I always go to school. There's always a lesson, no matter what. And sometimes I don't necessarily get it in the moment, but boy, is it profound after the fact. And those sweet times when you do get to experience the church. And yeah, very well put, man. Carlos, you shared with me once upon a time the teachings of your tradition, and kind of presented a framework, and that was within the box of the 4 visions to really kind of give an expanded view of more of the mechanics of what's going on in a metaphysical way. Would you mind sharing with the audience?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. One of the things that happens when an uninitiated, meaning a person that's never sat with ayahuasca before, typically what you hear is about the visions. And in the expression of that, what they're talking about is a visual experience where they're seeing things. Okay. When you get a little closer to the customs and the uses of the traditions, the purpose of the medicine isn't to offer you the visual, it's to offer you the healing. And as we say, you don't get what you want, but you'll get what you need. Okay.
Right.
And so in the Yahe culture, this healing takes place through 4 different types of visions, and in no particular order. The first vision, you can say, it's what you see. Eyes open or eyes closed. These could be spirit animals or other dimensions or other beings, past relatives, like Tim was mentioning. It's a visual represented in the infinite ways that a visual can be experienced, eyes open or eyes closed. And that's one type of vision. And this vision brings what we would say is coded or recorded information for your soul. So even though the mind in that moment may not understand what it's seeing, the soul understands the information that's being given to it and knows when to unpack it for you, and how that information or that frequency is designed into the healing that you're having in that moment. The second type of vision for us is called celestial surgery. And this is very much to what Justin was saying about the hospital. Here you will experience physical sensations, heat, cold, despair, joy. You might feel buzzing, vibrations. You might even see interplanetary beings performing a surgery on you. Or you may find yourself in one of their mobile hospitals. I'm in a spaceship, in a mobile hospital, and it's real. It's a spiritual experience that will manifest many times in a physical healing. After so many years, I've just seen it happen over and over again. I feel very confident in asserting that.
I have experienced that myself, so yes, I would certainly agree.
The third vision for us is called celestial counsel, and this is when you receive guidance on your life. Many times it's an intuitive voice that's your own voice. Sometimes you might hear an outside voice, but most of the time it's your voice, it's your intuition that you feel guiding you towards a decision in your life, things that you should be adding or incorporating, or things you should be eliminating. things you should be paying attention to, or things it's just guidance for your life. And it's curious to me because here many people say, oh, but I only heard my own voice. And that's the lesson, that your voice is that important, because who else's voice do you want to hear when it comes to your life, right? It's you. And I think this is the magic of the medicine, that no matter what vision you're having, what experience you're having, it's a healing journey that's always bringing you closer to trusting yourself, to knowing that there's a divine creator in you, and that makes you worthy of life, of love, because that's the biggest healing from the medicine. And for us, the fourth vision, this would be considered the most important vision, is called the no vision. And here you don't see, hear, or feel anything. What we say is that the medicine is taking you in such a deep journey that there's so much energy happening, there's so much intensity taking place, that she anesthetizes you. It's an anesthetic, so that you're basically asleep through this very deep healing. It's like akin to having an open heart surgery, where you're being put under before all that pain is taking place in order to get to the healing. And for us, those are the four visions.
Well, and I'd like to spend a little bit of time on this topic more, because the journey we took together to the Amazon in Colombia to do the work with Yahe, and when you and John Freddy had imparted this wisdom that you just shared for the audience, my takeaway, which has become really informed and shaped my philosophical view on how these things work. And I'd love to kind of spit back at you kind of what I took from you, and maybe you can put me back on the right course if I'm deviating one way or the other, injecting my own nonsense into it. But I feel like that first one, the second one that we covered today, first, as you explained it down there, is again, no particular order, right? Was that first experience of that celestial council. I think you called it going into the underworld, maybe down there. And that was, I think, from my experience, what I've pulled from it is it seems like the majority of the work that I've experienced with this is in that first place where I'm communicating with myself. And it seems like that higher consciousness, that part of us that is still closer connected to the divine than what our monkey brain can really understands more than we do. And it communicates with us. And I think everyone has experienced that. People that have never sat with these medicines, they dream, they meditate, they have these revelations. And it seems like this higher consciousness is speaking to us in terms of symbols and metaphor. Whether it's a flash of an image of something that's just fantastical, and then it's just kind of, well, what does that mean? And sometimes it's just blatantly obvious, and sometimes it takes a little while to really reflect and look at things from different perspectives to get this truth that somehow within us we already know. And the point of that journey is to reveal it to ourselves, unlock that body's ability to heal itself. Is that in the ballpark?
I would say yes. My ancestors teach that the journey is a journey in remembering the ancestral memory. It's remembering what we already know, that the connection has always been there, that the oneness has always been there, that we really are connected to nature. We really are connected to one another. There is no separation. The reason that the answer isn't immediately obvious is because of the why we're here. We came here to figure it out. We came here to pick it up and look under and look around and to fumble it and to break it and to put it back together again, to have that direct experience in creation, right? And so if the end goal is to have an experience in creation through unconditional love, then you have to have another side that offers you a resistance to that.
Yeah, it's beautiful, man. It's absolutely beautiful. Jalen, I want to open the floor to you here, man. This is this is some pretty deep stuff. It is very complimentary building of ways of looking at these extraordinary things. What is the Lakota's take on this?
In the past, we've come to a lot of things, and it's an understanding of sharing gifts. And I believe that, what is shared with us could be healing. And one of the ways that I was kind of thinking about all of this was when Revoca brought the ghost dance to our people. And Revoca, he's a Paiute native from down in Nevada. And our people believed that the ghost dance would bring back our traditional way of life when we were being assimilated and hunted down by the government, essentially. And, you know, we ended up on the reservations. So the medicine itself is a gift, and I see it that way as a young person, but I'm not too sure how the other people back home might see it. You know, it's a very special medicine, and we have this saying at home that our elders tell us is that not all of these medicines are for everyone, you know, and it takes a certain individual and a certain level of understanding and spirituality and studying and learning about maybe world religion, you know, and then applying that to our everyday life. So I think that my people are still behind in understanding the healing abilities, the therapeutics, the whole ceremony itself. But I, as a young person, I could go back and say, hey, you know, this is similar to the ghost dance. You know, the ghost dance didn't belong to us. And the same way with the peyote. The peyote didn't belong to us. It was given to us from the different tribes down in Oklahoma, like the Comanche, the Kiowa, the Oto, the Osage, the Southern Cheyenne. And these were medicines that were not traditionally ours, but we adopted them and we formed a whole way of life. And there were songs and, you know, a whole story that came with those. So I believe that this is one of those medicines that is coming to help the people from the north to the south, with the eagle and a condor meeting together. And that's, I always heard this growing up, and I'm living in it today. And it gives me chills just saying that, you know.
It's happening.
And that's where we're at today. So I was, you know, really blown away by my experience, and, you know, what how powerful the medicine is and what it has done for me, just sitting with it for, you know, those 3 nights and being present.
Was it a similar experience and familiar space to working with peyote as working with ayahuasca?
You know, the medicine really started to work on me when the songs were going really good. And in our ceremonies, when the songs are going really good, they say the prayers and the music and the meditation, they go together. So when all of that's on sync, it's like the healings begin to take place. And when my healing started to take place, the songs were going really good. And I was like, oh man, here it comes, you know. And like Justin was saying, being in the hospital, I was in a hospital. I could feel it, you know, like laying there and like, man, this is what it feels like to be in ICU. Like, this is what it feels like to be, you know, down, or, you know, I just felt really, really interesting. And then the healing came. And then, like they were saying, with profound visuals of my loved ones alive, and, you know, the ones that went on to the other side camp, it was awesome. And, you know, my biggest happiest moment when I met the old woman, because I always heard about this, and that was the first thing that I saw was the spirit of this medicine. And she presented herself as a woman, and that made me feel good as a man, as a young man, because I know that as men we're taught to be, you got to be strong, you got to do this, you got to do that. And the medicine showed me, well, you need to open up your feminine energy more. You need to be more loving and caring, and take care of the women, take care of your family, and they're going to take care of you.
Fantastic. Wonderfully said. I want to definitely open up this conversation. You know, I'd like to move beyond the prompt questions and answers to individuals. I mean, all of you gentlemen are masters in your craft, and, you know, please jump in and let's get some good synergistic conversations going. I'd like to start, though, by offering one more prompt for everybody, and jump in wherever you feel compelled to do so. Jalen was just talking about meeting the spirit of ayahuasca presenting as an old woman. woman. So for those that are familiar with ayahuasca, they're probably going to catch right on exactly with what he's probably talking about, or maybe infer that. Maybe that's, whatever the case may be. But a lot of people have no idea what we're talking about. So I'd love to ask you two specifically, and Jalen, of course, jump in as you feel led. What is that? What is he talking about when it comes to the spirit of the old woman? I take that to mean, grandmother, encountering, that. And that it seems to be a common experience that many people have. What would be your thoughts on that to paint the picture for those listening that may not have, or may be hearing that for the first time?
I think it's pretty common that across lineages that are working with these particular plants that there is a reference to them being a grandmother, and that's adopted and kept going because people have a lot of these similar experiences. It can be very challenging. The experience, the journeys themselves can be very demanding of us, but there is always kind of this thread of motherly love and I'm doing this for your best good, even when it's really challenging. And kind of like a grandmother, it's firm, but there's a lot of compassion involved in the whole process.
The grandmother spirit, I think, ties in very strongly to the message that Jalen was reflecting. Because for us, the plant medicine is a pillar in the family, and the family is a pillar to a healthy society. Mm-hmm. So for us, the plant medicine healing the family is very important. And one of the things that we see today is a demand for men to return to the ancestral foundation where we can steward our own fire and steward our children and steward our women with love, with protection, with provision. And that's I think the greatest message from the grandmother is for the children to return back to the ways of our grandparents and return back to nurturing and nurturing the family as men, to being there, to being providers of a warm fire for the family. And that's the message for us that the grandmother brings in the medicine.
I could relate to that, just while you're saying that, taking care of, the family and then that whole weight, but then same time, when we go home, we really depend on our female relatives, our lady folk. And that's what brings us that joy, that happiness. And you said it very well, brother, just that relationship between the man and the woman. And, even at home, we have so many instances where men are the terrorizers. And even across the world, men are the terrorizers of the family. And instead of terrorizing the family, why don't we heal the family? Why don't we protect the family? Why don't we provide? So what you said really was resonating in my heart, and I was feeling that. I was like, man, this is where it's at.
I want to also go back and touch on a point that you said it's roundabout direct connected. You were talking about how the Lakota received the gift of the peyote from your relatives to the south.
Yes, sir.
And now we are in a time where the genie is out of the bottle. Ayahuasca is, I don't know if this is true, but I would reckon that there, in any given weekend or night, there's probably as much ayahuasca being consumed across the world now at this point, in at least equal measure to what may be going on in South America on any given night. It is getting out there. And I know, Jalen, we have talked in the past about, some of the wisdom that the elders amongst your tribe have, really wanted to protect this and keep outsiders away from that. And, I understand you have a little bit different perspective on that in terms of, welcoming other folks in and sharing of that medicine. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, it goes back to, wanting to protect and provide. And back when the peyote came to my people, it was around 1918 where they got organized as a actual church organization. But before that, it was spreading across the nation like wildfire in like the 1800s, late 1880s, by the man by the name of a man by the name of Quanah Parker, and he was Comanche, and he was half native and half non-native, and his experience from when he was gored by a bull and he was gonna die, and a medicine woman healed him. They took him to a medicine woman in Mexico, and she had this medicine, this peyote. And when this medicine woman was working on him, he was near death, and his people were, like my people, were running from the government and were wanting to remain on the land and keep their way of life going. While he was under the influence of this medicine, you would say he was being administered this medicine. He himself had said that he saw Jesus. And Jesus came to him and talked to him and told him that this medicine that this old woman is giving him is the one that he needs to follow and that he has to take back to his people. And he didn't understand anything about it. And what it showed him was kindness and compassion and love, because our people, we were really prideful, and you always hear about Comanches were the warlords of the plains, you know, and they were very ruthless people like mine too. And he had a lot of pride as a chief, and he saw his people, how they were experiencing life. So the medicine told him, you know, love and take care of your people and follow this medicine, and go talk to the Indian agent. Go talk to him and make a way for your people. So he did. And that ceremony, the specific ceremony what we have today, it started to come up north, and then it made its way to my reservation in 1918. And in 1921, they organized. And back then, it was a different time. So you had to have been like in a good standing for like several years for even to become a church, you know. And the reason why they had to become a church was to protect our way of life and then our religion, because they call it the Indian Offenses Act of 1883, where they outlawed and banned all ceremonies by indigenous peoples across the United States. So it was illegal for us to have our Sundance, to have our sweat lodge, even to play the drum. It was illegal.
And that's only become legal in recent time, in my
1973.
lifetime. Yeah, well, okay, 1 year before I'm 30, so 1 year before I came along. So
Yeah.
maybe there's some coincidence there.
And it's going to lead to that, to the American Indian Religious Freedom Act, where our relatives were jailed because of praying this way. Mm-hmm. Our relatives, some of them even laid their lives down for this way of life. And the United States Supreme Court said, well, Mr. Native, you have your medicine here, you have your ceremonies. We want to protect that. But in order for us to protect that, you can't give it to any non-natives, or it has to be administered to federally recognized members of a federally recognized tribe or a member of your said church, Native American church. Okay, so Mr. Government made that law. So our relatives, they followed that. Well, we don't let any outsiders in because we don't want to go to jail. We don't want to, we don't want anyone taking pictures of our ceremony because it could be used as evidence against us in a court of law. So somebody that had a lighter toned skin maybe might be seen as an Indian agent coming to shut the whole thing down and kill everyone. So they were really scared, and they were really in a different time than we are today. So that teaching of wanting to protect and preserve was taught to us by the United States government.
Is that lightening up? Because I know, we've got out to the Sundance with you a few times now. We'll be, I don't anticipate I'll miss one going forward. It's been a very impactful thing in my life, and being able to share in that. And I know that first year we came, it was a little weird. And there, we had to kind of sniff each other out, and it was like little emissaries coming between the camps to request this, to request that. And now it's like, I consider, you and Dwayne and Will and it's like your family now. So, I mean, those barriers have been knocked down through that encountering and that it's shared experience and understanding as we've grown to know each other. How is that viewed? Because you're much more open and receptive with the Sundance that you run than some of the other Sundances that are out there. Are still much more leery, for the reasons that you just mentioned. How does that impact you?
It goes back to my grandpa, my great-great-grandfather. He got with one of Chief Red Cloud's cousin sister, and her name was Akita Piwi, which translates to looks at him, woman. And that was her name. And she got with a man by the name of William Garnette, who was one of the generals for the old Union Army. And he was stationed out in Fort Laramie. So my great-grandfather, great-great-grandpa, was non-native, and that's where the last name Garnett comes from. And I got a little bit of facial hair, like that. So that ancestry, that lineage, it came from that. So my openness is partly due to because of my grandpa was one of the sole negotiators for the chiefs back in the day when they went to Washington, D.C. to testify on the killings of Crazy Horse. And he helped translate for the forming of our reservation. So, my grandfather, my great-great-grandfather, he kind of opened that path for me a long time ago when I didn't even know it, by being that type of a man, to be able to speak 2 languages, walk in 2 worlds, and succeed, because he was really highly sought after at that time, because nobody could speak English and talk Lakota, and he was the sole interpreter for our reservation. So my grandfather had that openness to having friends, non-natives. And then as we go, my grandparents, my relatives, they got with non-natives too. And we have aunties and uncles that are mixed cultures, African-American, Mexican-American, Native American, all of it. So in our way, they call that wojapi. It's just a big old bowl of berry soup, a bunch of mixed berries in it. So, that's kind of what it is. It's a mix of cultures, and wanting to be open, because, I'm not willing to shut the door on my relatives. I'm not willing to lock the door. And our teepee door has no lock on it. Right. Our Sundance Lodge has no lock. Sweat Lodge door has no lock. And the door is always open. So I follow my grandfather's teachings of being open and welcoming and having friends and making friends, because if you don't have friends, you're gonna need some friends.
Right. So for you two guys, Carlos, you're the first generation born here from immigrant parents from Cuba, and Jay-Z, you hail from the East Coast. You guys have gone deep into, the culture and the traditions of this wisdom from South America. How is that? What is that like, being an actual medicine carrier, practitioner, whatever term you want to use for that, facilitator, whatever, as someone from outside of that culture coming in and learning such important and sacred information and then carrying that into other areas? What has that been like for you guys?
Well, there's a lot of privilege that I feel, and with that comes a lot of responsibility to hold myself to an immaculately high standard, to make sure that I'm upholding the teachings that come from my teachers and through the lineage. And I feel very lucky to be able to, like you were saying, walk a little bit in both worlds. I'm not a native Peruvian. It's not my genetic heritage, but something deeply spoke to me the first time that I drank ayahuasca and had that experience where I was searching for something, and it showed me that it was a viable path towards what I was looking for. And from then on, I focused on, my own work to do for myself, and it came to a point where it was very much out of the spirit of Aini, of reciprocity, as they say in the Andes, wanting to be able to give back and to be able to hold space for other people in a good way and to carry on. And I think that there's a benefit to especially Westerners, especially people from the U.S., that there's a level of accessibility working with somebody who's maybe non-native, that it can be a little bit less intimidating because there's cultural elements that are hard to put into words, that take a little while to pick up being in a different culture. There's certain cues and things that it just feels like it's an opportunity to help bridge and to help be a bridge. And that's my 2 cents, and my main focus is making friends and showing up. It's not a competition. It's not America's Next Top Shaman kind of situation. It's very much like we're all doing this work together, and as many new faces are coming in to offer, it is still a small relative to the rest of the human population, the human family. It's a small group of people. We're all on the same team. Is my vision.
Well, your lineage specifically, the folks that I've met from your lineage, you all are incredible musicians, like incredible, which adds so much to these ceremonies and the process. And you sing beautifully. You're a very talented musician and singer.
Thank you.
And you sing most of these Icaros. And if you don't know what an Icaros is, it's these songs and prayers that kind of lead and guide, the ceremony. It's kind of your anchor to reality while you're, in that place between the worlds. And most of these are in other languages than English. And man, did you speak these different languages prior? Did you have to learn those? I mean, your pronunciation is incredible. The way you deliver it is incredible. How fluent in these things are you?
Thanks, first off, for the kind words. I appreciate it. No, I started learning the songs. The songs were the gateway to the language, and I just kept finding myself called in the ceremonies to want to participate and to want to offer my prayer in that way with my voice. And then, you sing a song enough times, you're like, what do the words mean? What am I singing? And going into the linguistic study, and I can speak Spanish pretty well. I've got a serviceable. I can get around. I can understand a lot more from being in the space than I can really say with my first language, which is English, and learning Quechua, which a lot of in our tradition, a lot of the Icaros are coming from Quechua as well, and our main matriarch in our lineage, who I'm not going to say her name, just give her some privacy.
Sure.
But she's doing some incredible work now of taking the Icaros that were in Spanish and recontextualizing them in the various Quechua dialects to kind of, Peru's got a really mixed history, and it is a melting pot down there too. What would you say, a berry
soup?
Berry soup, yeah. So there's a lot of, with the influence of Spanish culture coming down there in a lot of detrimental ways, and people losing their connection to their lineage and their language, but keeping these practices like ayahuasca work alive and secretive and protected, and the songs coming through them in Spanish, and it's a beautiful thing to witness. The ongoing evolution of this thing. It's not a static thing. These songs are constantly changing how we perceive them, how we offer them. It's all dependent on internal and external factors. So it's really a beautiful living tapestry of song and music and prayer.
Yeah, and I love that term, man. Berry soup. How did you say that again? I'm looking.
Wojapi.
Wojapi. Wojapi. You know, someone told me recently that there's a difference between wisdom and intelligence, and that intelligence is knowing that a tomato is in fact a fruit and not a vegetable. And wisdom is knowing with good enough horse sense that you don't want to put tomatoes in fruit salad.
Yeah.
So maybe there's some kind of connection there with that. How about you, Carlos?
I don't put tomatoes in my fruit salad.
You don't put tomatoes in there either. No, well, what's it like being, you know, man, you're being in Colombia and working with your relatives and everything down there. Was it a barrier, or was it difficult to find your connection or your acceptance in that field down there, or what was that like for you?
No, I never had the intention of being a medicine carrier or facilitator. I don't know. No, it just happened. Day by day, much like what Justin was saying, it started with my healing journey. And I didn't know how sick I was, until I started getting well. Then I realized, wow, you're a fucked up human being, bro. Like, you really got to do something. Like, you can't be in society, man. Like, you're not, and I was like, shit, this is bad. I got to do something. And so I just kept going deeper into the medicine because it was making me better, right? To the point where I could really accept myself, really love myself, not be just trapped by constant shame in my own mind, And then in that process, I saw, wow, this really helps a lot of people. This is really a lot of fun, and I would translate, I would coordinate logistics, I would organize retreats, but never thinking, one day I'm going to, I don't know, chant or, lead a group or anything like that. But 13 years later, that's kind of where we're at. And here's the funny thing. I never had this big vision, or I never had this big initiation. For me, it was really simple. About 7 or 8 years in, I noticed how much love and attention I was getting from my elders and my teachers. And I began to feel awkward because I would ask the medicine, is this my path? And I would get no answer. And that's, I'm talking about 7 years, 8 years into this journey, right? And I would tell them, hey, listen, nothing's happening. I'm not getting an answer. Maybe you guys need to kind of like focus on something. I'm being very earnest. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be here next year. Maybe you guys need to find someone else to pour your time into, because I might be leaving. And they would laugh and they would say, drink more medicine. And year 9, year 10, I would drink more medicine. So I'm not getting an answer. I'm not just going on my path. I don't really get a lot of visions. Like, I love what we're doing, but maybe I belong somewhere else. That's why things aren't. And through a crazy series of events, I'm in no place to be serving medicine. And we're working out of Mexico. I'm leaving from Colombia to Mexico, and I get a phone call that my teacher's not going to make the event, that he needs me to go serve the medicine, which blew my mind because he knew exactly where I was in my life at that time. And there's no way I'm the guy you picked to serve medicine where I was, mentally, spiritually. I was processing a lot. Well, it is a ball-busting weekend. I'm put through the ringer. And sometime early in the morning, I go into a very deep, I don't move. I felt like forever. My friends told me I was there for like 90 minutes. And I was just in a dark space, nothing horrible, nothing gray. It was just a very dark space, but dark just in the color, not in the energy. It was like a neutral energy. I remember it as I closed my, and then this voice says, this is your path. Don't ever forget it. That was it. There was no ceremony about it. 20 seconds later, I was awake. and I'm guiding the ceremony. It's about time to close. But in that moment, when I opened my eyes, something inside of me was different. Like whatever took place that was non-ceremonial was very ceremonial in the shift that it created, you know. And from that moment on, I knew this is my path. And that was only about 3-4 years ago that happened. It wasn't, you know, and that's just the way it's been. But one of the things that Justin said that is very true, that I really resonated with what he was saying, was the privilege and the honor that I'm filled with in this mantle, this role that I get to play. And the responsibility of representing. And that was the one thing my teacher said to me. He said, hey, you're now representing 2 cultures. Walk straight, you know. And that was it, you know. And when you represent this millennial ancestral culture that's poured its faith and its people and its sacrifice into you, and you have the opportunity, like Justin said, to really be a bridge and to live that standard, I couldn't think of a better way to do this journey, you know, and that's kind of what it's been for me, bro.
Yeah, man. Thanks. Thanks for. I mean, it's got to be an incredible experience to go from someone that is seeking something, and then getting on that path and dealing with all of your own bullshit, your own darkness, your own whatever that's behind you, and then making that transition into working, you know, with this medicine to help others. You know, and it's, you know, hear all the time in you know, mental health spaces, you know, you can't be the wounded healer, you know, you got to heal yourself. You put your own mask on in the airplane before you try to put it on the guy next to you. And, you know, what must that feel like to be, you know, because if you're the outsider coming in, you know, these folks you guys carry yourselves with just impeccable way of presenting yourself and how you show up in the world. And, you know, I'm sure you're both human. You know, you have your own problems and you have your own rough days. What is that like? Because I'm sure the people you're working with are expecting you or have this view of you that you are this next level guy, and, you know, you're who you are in your core and you're striving to be that thing. What does that feel like? Does that, like, imposter syndrome ever come along with this kind of work with people that do this stuff? And if so, how have you dealt with it? You know, what is that like?
I can only speak for me. The seeking doesn't stop. There's in no way am I a fully realized human being, a fully healed person. I've made a lot of progress from where I used to be. And, you know, with I've dealt with depression and suicidal ideation in my life, and working through those things and going through, you know, many layers of dark nights of the soul with different circumstances in my life. And all of those things, walking through those different fires kinds of builds an empathy and a relatability. And the most beneficial healing lessons that I've ever learned from any of my teachers in the medicine space have been around their own humanity and not coming across as being unrelatable or putting on an air of completion or perfection. It's always come from their willingness to share themselves where they are as it is, and show that even through the personal humanity that they've got there and whatever faults in their character, that it's reaffirming that you don't have to be a perfect being to offer something of value in service to other people. You don't have to be fully healed and fully realized to be able to be helpful. And really that affirmed more than any other teaching that I got through any of the other messages, that it's okay to meet yourself where you're at and give an offering. It doesn't have to be, something that has so much responsibility. You don't jump feet first into the deep end when you don't know how to swim and tread water. Like, you work your way up to certain levels of being able to offer things, but you can start offering things and be of service where you're at. You don't have to wait.
I like that.
I'm going to go with what Justin's saying on that. You know, if you talk about imposter syndrome, if you offer from where you're at, then you don't have to worry about being an imposter.
Right. Dude, that's one of the things I absolutely love about you, man, is first meeting you, you know, on that initial get to know Carlos. It doesn't take real long before you really understand Carlos is absolutely 100% real dude and can go into some pretty dark humor places, which resonates incredibly with the veterans that we work with, and just makes that connection. So you do that very well.
Yeah, I love the dark in me. I don't run from it. You know, you have to. I believe, you know, you don't have to do anything, but you should. To be happy, you have to accept your dark side. I want someone like Justin that tells me, yeah, dude, you know what? I thought about taking my own life. You know, I was in a place where I was stuck and I didn't know what the fuck to do. And even now, when it looks like I have it together, I'm just doing the best that I can with what's in front of me. Because that's real. I can identify with that. You know, if you're flawless, I don't know what to do with you.
And Jay, your path was probably a little bit different. I mean, my understanding is you grew up in this. You were running ceremony in your own way as a little kid. Your mother told me that. Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about what that was like growing up in this as your reality from a little kid?
Yeah, you know, being involved as far as culture and spirituality and tribe was my pinnacle point of my childhood, where it just like made it what it is for me today, to be able to practice, to pray. And back then, I had a lot of grandmas and grandpas on both maternal and paternal side, and they all practiced this way. And they found sobriety through the Sundance, through following the Sundance way. And they lived by that. And one of their teachings was it's good to start early. It's good to start when you're young. And one thing, what they taught me was right from wrong, really young, and a way how to voice myself. And a lot of these things that I do are gifts from the Creator. Like, you all have gifts from the Creator. And one of my gifts was being a singer. And just being a little guy, I remember singing for a group of veterans that were hired on as tribal police officers. And I sang them a veteran song, and they did a big honoring for them. And at that time, all those veterans and all those police officers, after I got done singing, they pulled out their wallets and, hey, come here, say thank you for singing for me, and kind of some offerings. And I was like, woo, we're getting paid to sing, and and I was that just that sharing of offering of was like, yeah, you go sing, So I just started to sing, and pretty soon I was like going all over and helping my grandpa on my mom's side and helping my grandpas on my dad's side, and learning because each medicine person, their medicine is unique to them. So one ceremony might be real loud and a lot of noise and a lot of lights, and one ceremony might be real soft and subtle and real kind and it's dependent on the individual. So I saw that diversity and that uniqueness to the spiritual men and women that I was learning from. And they always say, when you're a singer, it's your role to call the grandfathers, to call the grandmothers, and learn the songs, correct order, all that. And as I started to grow, I started to gain more responsibility. Grandson, put this here. Grandson, do this. Grandson, wear this, put this on, paint your face like this. They dressed me up in such a way where I was like dressed like my grandpa's. I was all cowboyed out, like look like them, go cowboy hat and everything. And my role as a singer grew into being a helper. And I had exclusive, insights on before and after the ceremony, some of the medicines, how to pick them. And it kind of came step by step and gift by gift. And eventually, after becoming a helper, my grandpa started to pass away one by one and started to leave this world. And my relatives were down and kind of having a hard time. And it was the songs that held us together. So by me being a good singer and by me paying attention and learning, they said, well, my grandson here, my son, my nephew, we want him to run a ceremony. We asked him to run a ceremony, and then we're going to help him. And then he has a journey that you have to walk. They were talking like that to me. So I just followed, and it brought me to a wonderful place. And I never, ever thought I was going to run a Sundance. I never, ever thought I was going to be anything. I just wanted to be Grandpa's singer.
Yeah.
I thought Grandpa was going to be around forever, but
I think your family may have seen it a little more clearly than you did. Your mom told me here a while back that when you were a little guy, that the other kids were playing cops and robbers or whatever little kids play, and you were hosting ceremony for imaginary friends, or I don't know, but it was very interesting to me.
One thing that when the dogs always died, we all had a funeral. Fan them off and send them back.
So how do you say your Lakota name in Lakota?
Okay, so my Lakota name is Danyan Akegli. And how it was told to me is Danyan refers to a time before what we know as the world, long time ago. And Ake means again, and Gli means to walk on this earth. So in a literal translation, they said, you came from a long time ago. You're a reincarnation of the old grandpas. And that was the name that I carried. So my name is really significant to me because a lot of people that said, Jalen, you're like an old man. Boy, you're just, everything you do is like an old man, You're teaching everything, how you do it. And I was like, that's who walks with me. That's his name, That's Dion Kegley. He's an old man.
And if you were to translate that over into English directly?
It's he who returns again.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So he who returns again.
Well, you're definitely wise beyond your years, So
it's been like that growing up, man. I was always like talking my dad through things too. Like you're supposed to be talking me through things,
Well, I tell you what, man. One thing I'm going to take away from this podcast for sure. I have a dog named Luna, who I love very much, and when her time comes, we're going to have you back down this way to host that funeral. I can't imagine anyone better doing that. I want to just shift topics a little bit to also kind of paint some pictures for those that may be watching this podcast that may find this interesting but don't necessarily have that frame of reference. So what I'd like to do is just kind of go around the table and, if you wouldn't mind, offering. What does your ceremony look like in terms of the sights and the sounds and the smells? And, can you paint that picture verbally?
Okay.
We'll start here and go around if that's all right.
Okay. So one of the ceremonies that I resonate with is the Sweat Lodge. And we call it Inipi ceremony. And that translates into the breath of life, purification. And it's a circular dome shape made of 28 willow sticks, and they're bound together. And back in the old time days, they would cover it with animal skins like elk or buffalo, bison. But today we cover it with, brother knows, we cover it with tarps and, stuff from Harbor Freight, whatever we could get, moving blankets. And central to the lodge is a central fireplace where heated stones are brought from the sacred fire into the lodge. And the leader of the lodge pours blessed water onto these rocks. And it is believed by my people that the steam that comes off the rocks is the breath of Mother Earth, purifying us. And the ceremony consists of 4 rounds or 4 doors, and each round and door builds an intensity, and each round or door has certain invocation songs to the spirits and to the grandfathers and the grandmothers in the 4 direction, and it really does build an intensity. But by the time the ceremony is over, it's cooled off, it's nice, and so what happens inside of the inipi is a purification rite. And then the next one that we have is peyote, Native American Church. It's a ceremony that starts from dusk to dawn, and we're sitting inside of a teepee and the central fireplace, and we burn cottonwood, and it gives us light. And there's always a facilitator. We call him the roadman. He's the chief, and then the chief has the assistant, which is the drummer, and he helps drum for people while they sing and carry their song. And we have the altar man, or he's like the incense guy, the cedar man. He's always putting cedar on the fire and helping people. And then we have a ceremonial firekeeper, what we call the fire chief, and he's tasked of like ornately taking care of the fire all night. That fire is like clean, like no ashes all over. They take care of it. He's in charge of that. And all throughout the night, we're consuming the Holy Sacrament peyote. And there's some really beautiful songs that go with that ceremony. And in the morning, there's a sacred woman. It's usually the leader's wife, or it's usually the leader's sister or mom, that brings in ceremonial water to share with all of the participants. And, it's really an intense ceremony. You have to sit upright all night. And then there's even times where we sit on our knees as a form of being reverent for the water and for the women. It's really what made me who I am today, and be able to speak and talk and sing and express myself the way that I do was partly due to the medicine, the peyote. And the last and final one is the Sundance. That's the most intense and the most brutal, guys. And it's hot, and it happens from summer solstice to maybe about the end of August. And we call it Sundance season. Our tribe's fairly big, so we have a number of Sundances on our tribe. But the one that we take care of, it starts at night, dusk. It'll start Thursday night, and it'll go Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, and we'll end on Monday afternoon. During that whole duration, the Sundancers will enter a lodge that's built with a center pole, and you can imagine these rafter poles that come to the center to form like a big teepee. And the men and women dancers go in there, and they'll stay in that lodge for the duration of the dance. And they'll be fasting without food and water for 4 days in the heat of the summer. And the music there, it brings an energy that when we're dancing, we do a continuous breath work. So you can imagine the drums going boom, 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 boom. And each dancer has an eagle bone whistle that comes from the longest bone off of the wing of an eagle. And it makes a really sharp, shrill noise. It sounds scary, if you're not used to it. And all the dancers are blowing this, and it's a continuous breath work that we're not actually voicing our prayer, but we're voicing it through our breath. And that right there has took me to a place of meditation where it opened up, where I saw just like in the ceremonies that you ran, where I saw my relatives, I heard them, I smelled them. And while all this is going on, you could smell cedar and sage, and you could feel the heat of the sun. And it's like, man, I need some water. I need a relief. But the only relief that you have is to look at the central tree, and it's a big cottonwood tree. And we pray to that. And the veterans are very, very highly respected. And that's how I met the brothers here, was they came. And that tree represents our old way where we took enemies' lives. So to backtrack, when we get our tree, the veterans are very key, because when they cut down this tree, it's taking a life. We're taking a life, and the veterans, they know about that. Some of our veterans, they've taken lives, and when the veteran strikes that tree, that is a symbol of our old ways, that we are taking this tree's life, but we're going to take him back to our camp, and we're going to make him our relative, and he's going to be our brother. She's going to be our sister, our grandma, and she or he will stand strong for the rest of the 361 days of the year. And our Sundance is only for 4 days. So during that duration, people could go back to the Sundance grounds and make prayers and offerings, and it'll die. It'll go back to looking like, fall foliage, and but the power is still there. And then until we take it out, and then it's a recycle. So we burn the tree and we'll use it for a sweat lodge ceremony. Everything is really in tune with one another. So those are the 3 ceremonies that I really use, and that was really impactful on me in my young life as being a young man.
And having had the opportunity to come out and participate as a Kichita veteran in that ceremony was a very big honor. There's some power there, man. I saw some weird stuff I can't explain at the Sundance.
Yeah.
And
spooky things.
Sometimes, but beautiful things.
Yeah,
there's a lot of healing in the suffering that goes on there. And that's really why you all do the Sundance,
yes,
right?
That is why, the Lakotas have been through immeasurable trauma, and the Sundance is our way to heal and to connect to our ancestors on the other side. And it really is a sense of belonging. It's a camaraderie. It's a fellowship. It's in our way they call it kola. You have friends. And that's what it comes down to. Is Sundance is a friendship ceremony where we don't fight. We invite our enemies to come pray with us. So a long time ago, when the Sundance was happening, the enemy tribes they wouldn't fight. They would honor that ceremony. So you would have multiple tribes meet up at one area and have a Sundance. So, for example, like we have stories where our people went down to Utah and Sundance with the Northern Ute people, and the Northern Ute people came up here, or with the Shoshone and the Crow. A lot of similarities. The Plains people always had the Sundance. And it's a new religion. It's probably been around for about 2,000 years. From our records, from keeping track of the lineage and how the first Sundance happened. So the style that we have is closest to the original way that our grandfathers and the anthropologists and how they studied it. So, we had to go back and look at the United States government's role in banning our ceremonies. So if you want to ban something, you got to know about it, right? Okay, so all of these studies have been done to figure out why we do these things. So I actually went back and looked at some of the old accounts of the Sundance, and they were brutal. And it scared the men that were studying this. And one of the guys' name was James Walker. He was a real well-known anthropologist back in the 1800s, and you guys could look him up. He has a whole story, has a whole anthropology, like texts and information about the Sundance, but it's from a really racist point of view. But I had to read that in order for me to learn. So if it wasn't for James Walker writing all that, I wouldn't learn some of these things. So it was to the knowledge of the books and, the history and all of that, how I learned.
It's amazing the grand design and how it all ties together. Even you think you're doing one thing and it's really serving a different purpose, So it's kind of the cosmic joke in a lot of ways. Joke's on you, James Walker.
Right?
Jay-Z, I'd love you. It's same, man. Same question to you, the sights and sounds.
So the lineage that I'm a part of is a mestizo, which means mixed Peruvian lineage. And so there's different traditions that are coming out of the deeper jungle tribes and getting mixed in with the kind of westernized Spanish culture into like what they would call curanderoism, like curers. And my main teachers are ayahuasqueros. They work primarily with ayahuasca, but there are other plants that are offered in healing context, and different dietas that can be done to work with specific types of energy and for specific ailments and things like that.
And when you say dieta, could you explain that?
Dieta would be like a long format, working specifically with one or two types of plants. Usually in a dieta, like it's a diet. So you're doing this long format with a specific plant, and usually ayahuasca is used in conjunction with that to kind of give the ability to have more sensitivity and insight when those things are happening. But the ceremonies that I run, I'm mostly just offering ayahuasca, and I'm doing it under the way that I learned from my teachers. And oftentimes we do our work at night in the dark, but sometimes we do it in the day. My favorite has lately been doing it around sunset. So you get a little bit of both. And the ceremonies begin kind of with an opening prayer, setting the tone of the container. It's a very contemplative, meditative, inward process. And it's very much each person's journey is an internal journey, but it's also a group experience. So no one's talking to each other during the space. And there are traditional songs, especially at the beginning of the night, these icaros that have been passed down. Some of them have been learned directly from plant dietas, from plants, and some of them have been channeled through different things and different things that are inspiring, and in various languages, in Quechua and in Spanish. And so the beginning of the night is more, in our tradition, it's more a cappella. It's just the voice guiding the experience, and then occasionally there'll be some kind of rattle involved, like a shakapa, which is like a leaf rattle, or there's a in the Peruvian stuff, there's like a garland of seed beads that's also called the shakapa, and there'll be occasionally going around with this leaf rattle or this seed rattle. There'll be some kind of personal clearings. Our tradition doesn't do as much of the one-on-one work as some other lineages do, where we're pulling things specifically out of certain people. A lot of the time, what our aim is with our lineage, from my perspective, is just sitting behind the medicine, letting the medicine do the work. And the songs are to guide the overall journey for people, and to offer both a point to anchor back into the space if they're feeling really deep in their experience, or to offer them kind of a way to propel themselves deeper in their journey. And then later on in the night, there'll usually be some drumming, and the ceremonies last somewhere in the ballpark of like 4 to 6 hours. They're not an all night affair like some of the peyote ceremonies. So they're shorter, but during that time, it feels like it could be forever.
Right.
I know, it was taking a long time.
Yeah. and then at the end of the night, myself personally, I'll play guitar, and some other instruments might come out, flute and things like that, and some more kind of contemporary folk music, and some other things that are fitting for myself or for the group container. And that's different. I'm a part of a 501c3 called the Church of the Infinite, and we have a number of different ministers, and each facilitator has a different flavor of experience that they bring, and some are very proficient at certain instruments, and some have a very eclectic taste.
That is to put it lightly, man.
Yeah.
Like
You're a rock star.
Oh, thank you so much. Our matriarch down in Peru, she plays drum, and she's got a beautiful voice, but she doesn't play any other instruments. It's not a prerequisite to be proficient at a musical instrument. It's just something that a lot of the other facilitators in our lineage have found inspiration through hearing people play and have mastery, and wanting to, a lot of the time it's just wanting to broaden an offering, or to, for me, the guitar has always been an accompaniment to the voice. It's like, I want backup you know. And really what I want is the choral. I want everyone singing with me, especially at the end of the night. That's some of the most joyous parts of the ceremony, is hearing everybody's voice and feeling the textures of gratitude and joy that come through that. And the prayer is really strong and beautiful.
And I think when Jay and I had the privilege to sit with you, I think we experienced that in spades on that third night.
Yeah, the music was going really good, and he was singing, and something just told me to sit up and like pull your fan out and help sing, you know. So I started to harmonize in the background, and man, it sounded good. And pretty soon I was like, had tears rolling down my eyes, and it was like sitting at church again. You know,
it was powerful.
It was really good. I like that. I like the songs.
Yeah, it means a lot. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of the general overlay and format, and sometimes we'll often at the end of the night we invite before we close the ceremony, we invite other people to share music as a way of offering a prayer, or sometimes people will do poetry if they're not a singer.
Yeah.
Sometimes people will play music. We've had people offer different kinds of prayers and blessings with water and things like that, and then we'll usually close the ceremony with a prayer and share a little bit about our experience. And sometimes it's best to leave the ineffable things where they lay, and keep some of that wisdom intact, and not try to contextualize it and try to verbalize it and try to put it into these compartmentalized boxes, because not everything that we receive in these kinds of mysterious practices is something that's a soundbite and can be shared.
Right.
A lot of it happens in these ways that trying to put it into words cheapens it.
And sometimes you just can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing short of magical in both of these experiences. I mean, one thing I can definitely say, the commonality here is nothing short of magical. In the healing that goes on in these practices is inexplicable. And, it's what a way to heal. I mean, if you have the choice between have a pill that is going to put you in the middle of our roadmap of life with the peaks and the valleys. And my friend Derek says that the valleys part is the worst day of your life. It is the grief. It is the sorrow. It's the unrelenting assault of all of the feelings of the dark side of being a human. And the peaks are the joy and the love and the birth of your children and the date of your marriage and just all of the great things. And these pills, their magic seems to be to just kind of cut off the valleys, but they're also cutting off the peaks. Mm-hmm. And I don't really see any healing in that. And especially coupled with the idea that some of the side effects of these medications is more suicidal ideation.
Yeah, they'll make you think crazy if you're not careful,
So what obvious choice, of where we're going. So Carlos, I've also experienced your ceremonies, and I'd love you to paint the picture for how you work with the medicine.
Very similar to both of what Jalen and Justin shared. You'll find that these earth-based ceremonies have a lot of commonalities, right? So for us, our space is called the Maloka, and so traditionally in the jungle, it's a round structure. You might find Malokas with walls, like the one you saw with us has no walls.
Right. And beautiful. The aesthetic is definitely part of the experience.
Well, it's all made by hand, right? So you have the palm roof, the earth floor, and we wet it and we stamp it. We wet it and we stamp it so it gets relatively flat.
Right.
In our tradition, the Maloka will typically have a fire inside, but at times there can be a fire outside of the Maloka, but just one fire per ceremony, right? So yeah, it's a principal fire. So you have either outside or inside. You could have a Maloka with if it's big enough and it's cold, they'll have like chimneys, but that's not the fire. The ceremonial fire is one. And for us, the preparation is important. As Justin was saying, the dieta, the diet that you It is a mental, physical, and spiritual preparation. It doesn't have to be very extensive but there's just mindfulness of things, what you eat, your sexual energy, especially the days leading up to ceremony, what you're watching, what you're listening to. You want to go in as light as possible. Even though people say, no, I have to be. No, you don't have to be ready to go. You don't have to be well to go see the doctor. Right? You're never going to be right to go to ceremony. That's just an excuse. Yeah. But you make a preparation as best you can. Alcohol, certain foods, and again, sexual energy, and then other things. Then, of course, when you're dealing with plant medicine like peyote or ayahuasca, there's a caution when you're taking certain pharmaceuticals, antidepressants or MAOIs, things like this. You want to have a clear bill of health from your doctor before participating. And once you get to the ceremony space, typically we like to start about 2 hours beforehand, and then everybody just kind of finds their spots. Sometimes we have a little bit of a different. We share just a little bit of time, a little bit of music. Sometimes people will have different prayers. They want to do like a tobacco prayer, a pipe prayer, things like this, or a hape prayer. And for us, typically, each participant will spend about 5 minutes with the facilitator, just sharing their intention, getting some general orientation of what their prayer is, or their spiritual payment, or their reason for being there. If it's the first time they're there, a little bit about their medical history, just to get a knowing. And then we start at about typically 8 or 9 p.m. in the evening. We do have daytime ceremonies as well, but this is more for study, as opposed to the traditional ceremony. It's a healing journey. We'll begin by offering songs to the ancestors, or calling in the ancestors, as my brothers already here expressed and explained. And then everybody comes up and they receive a cup of the medicine, a little cup, typically what you would call like a shot glass or less. And then we have a couple hours of silence in the Yahe tradition. There may be some chanting or some icaros. The leaf rattle or the palm rattle might be played. For us, it's called the waida, and maybe a little bit of harmonica. But typically, at the beginning, it's silence. This is a process where you're growing in communication with the medicine. Then after this period of silence, which again will last about 2 or 3 hours, a little bit more chanting will take place. We'll offer a second cup. At that point in time, typically then the energy in the room begins to pick up. There's more chanting, more playing of the leaf rattle, or the shells, and then drumming. We in the Yahe culture, we do have a focus on it's a cleansing, a limpia, where each individual just has an opportunity to from the facilitators to receive some songs and some prayers in support of them, some cleansing of the energy. Throughout the evening, we smudge the space with something called copal, which is a sweet resin. And we will go from 8 or 9 in the evening till about 6 in the morning. After the second cup is offered, you're allowed to come and request as much medicine as you want to drink, a little bit, a lot, whatever you feel. We always say, listen to your heart. Just ask your heart. Don't listen to the mind, because the mind definitely doesn't want you to drink more medicine. Right. Yeah. The mind's like, no, we're good.
Neither does the tongue.
And the body's like, listen, you've done a great job. Just rest. And the heart's like, no, wait, we need more. But that's the problem. The heart is always really quiet like this, and the mind is really loud and the body's heavy. So we say, listen to the heart. And then at around 6 in the morning, we'll begin to encourage people to drink water or tea if we have. And then at about 7:30, we clean up the space. We check in on everyone. We have a closing talk, and that will end that journey. And then we typically work 2 nights, and then we'll take a night off, and then we'll have a third night, something like that.
That's amazing. And, this is all set within the context of an awful lot of other preparatory things that are going on in the background. When we were in Colombia, we started every day with some exercise. That was probably unique to Operation Purify, because that was for veterans, and it was, there's a larger line of thought that went into that. And then we would pray. And that's really powerful, watching just how uncomfortable most people are when put on the spot and asked to offer their own prayer, and to watch that transformation as they find their own connection over the course of their time there, and how that prayer changes, especially with these military guys. There's one guy in particular I'm thinking of who I love very much. He was definitely not in that comfortable spot. In most of his prayers, he would flip into military NCO mode. I want to thank everybody for being here. And, it was almost like a safety brief. And then by the end of the experience, it's this heartfelt poetry that's coming out in offerings to the Creator, and definitely finding that connection. And watching this transformation is so amazing. And again, it just makes me do that compare and contrast with what we have in conventional medicine that is available to us. Another modality that you all do that's very interesting to me there was the bitters and the sweets. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because wow, was that incredible. Wow, was that intense at the same time.
As it's really important to understand in the context of this conversation how important plants are to our culture. For us, all of nature is a sentient being. And everything in nature, including you, me, and everyone listening, has purpose. But expressed purpose, intentional purpose, not random purpose. Like, you've got two hands and maybe you can play a guitar. No. You were made to do this, right? And so in the plant kingdom, for us, there's access to different frequencies and energies. And so when we look at bitter plants, for example, for us, a bitter plant would be tobacco. It's a great example. Right? We make plant baths with these. And really it's just boiling. Physically, logistically, you're just boiling the plant. It always helps if you do it with consciousness. And if you offer a prayer to the Creator, asking for the energy of the consciousness plant to be awakened. With the more intention and consciousness you apply to things, typically the better your results. So we make these bitter baths and we pour them over our bodies. It's really simple. You just make the bath. When you use it, you pour it over your body at the end of your shower or your regular bath, and you let it air dry. And we'll do this for a couple of days with the bitters. And this is to remove heaviness, to remove fatigue, to remove energetic residues, like call it energetic dust bunnies or something like that, right? And it brings a certain level of energetic protection as well. And then we couple that with sweet baths. For us, basil is a very sweet plant, and mint. And so we would again go through this ritual of preparing the bath. And then every day, once a day at least, applying it and letting it air dry. And this brings in sweetness, right? It's the energy of attraction. We're using sweet baths so that we have clearer thoughts. We have a more sweet disposition towards ourselves, more compassion towards others, and attract this energy into our life. So we use this balance of bitter plants and sweet plants to cleanse ourselves and to put ourselves in a better position to live a fulfilled life.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I know when I was learning about that with you, I couldn't help but think about the Lakota practices of the sacred plants that are used in ceremony. And there's also kind of a version of bitters and sweets. Would you mind explaining that?
Okay, so just like brother was saying, the mint, the wild mint, it's used as a tea. So a lot of our medicines that we have are roots or plants like sage, sweetgrass, osha root. We call it bear root. And these medicines have a unique quality and characteristic and effect to them. But when you combine them, it becomes something totally different. It becomes so powerful that, some of our medicines are used as antibiotics. Some of our medicines, like for example, the Sundance medicine, when we pierce we put it on our wounds, and we don't put Neosporin or we don't put Band-Aids, you know. It's Mother Earth that is our Band-Aid, and, you know, your wounds heal up fine, you know. And like the peyote is very bitter. Tastes bad. It tastes bad. And
Which tastes worse? Was it, in your opinion?
peyote.
Peyote tastes worse than ayahuasca?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
ayahuasca was like tobacco tea. That's what it tastes like to me. Like,
It gets worse.
yeah, it was,
You build up an aversion to it. It doesn't get better.
and it was like boiled down coffee, tobacco tea. But peyote is literally like putting dry, bitter sand in your mouth. You know, it's all dry, you know. But when you eat a fresh button, a fresh grandmother or grandfather, it's like eating an apple. It's like eating a kiwi. It's actually sweet. But once you dry it, it becomes really bitter. And, you know, I've always had a hard time when the medicine comes around, my hands start getting sweaty, and I'm looking at everyone eating, and they're making this face, and they bless themselves and pass it on, and you smell it, and you're like, oh, your jaw kind of locks up a little bit, you know. You smell the tea, and I would say that's the most bitter medicine that I came across was peyote and ayahuasca, but the effects and the work are in alignment with each other.
Yeah, no, and you know, my understanding, back in the day, I ran a capital campaign for Santa Gleska University there in the Rosebud Reservation, and part of the effort of that campaign was to preserve language, culture, and spirituality. And one of the things that, you know, as I was preparing the materials and going through all of that, was the teachings on the difference between the flat cedar and how it's used, and the sweetgrass and how that is used. And, you know, so it was my understanding of it, and I'd love it if you could correct me or expand on this. You know, there are certain plants that we burn to push out negative things, and there are other plants that we use to invite positive things.
Yes, sage. So white sage, any type of sage, is used across the world to cleanse or clear energy, and we've used that for a long time, and we use it to clear ourselves. So say, for example, I'll just take a piece of sage and put it in my hand, smell it, and bless myself, or I'll like literally light it on fire and, you know, kind of wand the smoke towards me and bless myself. That's one way how we use sage, or we boil it and make a tea. It's really good that way too. It could be healing for your intestinal, your digestive system. Really, really good medicine. And then cedar. I was told that cedar belongs to the thunder beings. And in our way, the thunder beings' teepee is made out of cedar poles, and that's where it lives. And long time ago, we would live in teepees on the land, and there would probably be a tornado coming. You know, what do? I'm gonna go burn some cedar and smudge off my teepee and ask the thunder spirits not to knock over my teepee. That was like the teaching that cedar called a protection. It put a protection around us, because that thunderbird spirit, he's not gonna mess up his own house, you know. And we use that as a way of calling the good spirit in, and then as a welcome, you know, to say, hey, you know, we're good, you know, don't mess my house up, you know. So we would burn cedar around our teepee when a thunderstorm would come, and that's the old teaching. And today we use cedar as a way of helping people and cleanse energy, and essentially call their spirit and welcome them, you know, because sometimes we could get so caught off, you know, our path, and we could get so far down the way that we forgot we're human and we need those things, you know. And sweetgrass is also used for calling the spirits. Before any type of spiritual work is to be done, we would burn sweetgrass, or we would burn sweetgrass so that our mind would be clear. It would be focused, and just like how he was saying, the sweet medicine focuses you. It kind of gets you ready, you know. And that sweetgrass, it does that. It gets us prepared so that we have the good things to say, we have good thoughts, and that the words are there. And finally, the bear root is used by the bear. You know, our people, they've watched animals in the nature, and how this animal relates to Mother Earth. And our relatives long time ago saw this bear digging up these roots and eating these roots and going in the mountains. And this bear came to different medicine people and showed him, well, this is the root that I use, and you're going to be a part of me, and go and dig this root. Mm-hmm. So it was like a dream. You know, it was like you would say a vision, you know. So a lot of these medicines came with songs and teachings and core fundamental values of life that, like you were saying, you have to hold yourself to a higher standard. And even just going to pick this medicine, you know, you hold yourself to a higher standard to say, thank you, Mother Earth. Thank you for providing this. So Mother Nature is our cathedral. Mother Nature is our hospital. Mother Nature is our classroom. Mother Nature is our sanctuary. And, you know, one day we will all go back to Mother Nature, you know, and that's how powerful it is. So those are the medicines that we use, you know.
So would you gentlemen agree that there's a overlap and understanding of these practices in that regard?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've been also a studying herbalist for 15 plus years at this point, and I've worked with many different plants in a lot of different ways, topically, internally, making different formulations of things that are correspondent, and figuring out, you know, based on my travels in South and Central America and learning from different traditions there, and learning from the Western pharmacopoeia of herbal stuff. And yeah, it's there's a lot of congruency between all the different traditions, which is really interesting when you start looking at it. You're like, okay, yeah. It starts to become apparent that there are some kind of foundational truths, because there couldn't be, between these different geographical regions, there couldn't be this kind of agreement that certain types of plants are good for certain things and have certain particular flavor of energy, without there being some kind of, you know, objective truth to some of that in people's personal experiences over time.
Well, you know, and that raises another interesting question to me. You know, the topic of psychedelic-assisted therapy, which is really kind of what we're talking about in a lot of ways, but when it's used in discussions politically or from the VA or from Congress or whatever, we're talking about basically taking cognitive behavioral therapy and just placing psychedelics on it in some way. Or some variant of that. And one of the big things that's always talked about is, you know, we need research. Well, and I'm all for research, but not at the expense of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I think it's absolutely repulsive that people seeking healing that don't want to go down these roads of these antidepressants and benzodiazepines and SSRIs, and they do want to access this incredibly beautiful practice that you three gentlemen serve and we're talking about. And for a lot of people, I'm sure this is the first time a lot of people are actually hearing this kind of information in this manner. That's not just people that have sat with this talking about it. We want to research and understand the how it works, and then it seems like we want to take that and distill that down and pull out all of the beauty and the spiritual sustenance that's actually going along with that. And you know, the way I view it is like looking at it through the lens of Catholicism and the Eucharist. You know, it's like a lot of people get a lot of spiritual nourishment and healing out of their spiritual practices within the Catholic Church, and they receive the Eucharist. And if you're a good, devout, believing Catholic, you know, that is the host is, you know, experience of transubstantiation. It is the actual essence of Christ, you know, in that bread. And you know, it almost feels like we're taking these plants. And, you know, to put it into a metaphorical sense, we're taking that Eucharist and trying to figure out how to pull Jesus out of the bread and then be able to serve you just the wafer. And let's put it in a clinical type of environment to do that. So, I'm all for the research of getting down to how it works, but I think what it really comes down to me is I know it works. I've seen it work. I've seen it work for many, many people at this point. I've seen it work for myself. So there's definitely a lot of anecdotal evidence on these things. I don't know that this is something that can be defined. This is a practice that has been going on for thousands of years. And again, these experiences are as unique as an individual's fingerprint. So I'm not sure how you're ever, no amount of research is going to be able to get down to the core of actually how these things are working. So we're limited to deal with the physical real world properties and try to get an understanding of that. But that seems like it's missing the boat. And, what I would advocate for is if we're going to do these types of research on these plants and they come from these different regions of the world, I think there needs to be a cultural anthropological element to it to really get down and understand the essence of what is happening. How do you guys feel about that kind of research going on? Is that diminishing? Is it disrespectful to these medicines, these practices, or is it just something that makes sense? How do you feel this is going to go? What direction is it going to take, and what form might it arrive in?
From the perspective of my culture, we work closely with Western doctors. For us, removing barriers in the mind is really important. So allowing the Western world to collect the data that it needs is fine. The issue comes when you want to patent God.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I think you're gonna find a hard line where that's not something that we're open to. Mm-hmm. Because as we've all expressed, this is something that was given to us by our great-great-great-great-grandparents. And it's been given freely. And that should be the way that it continues to be given freely, from one generation to the next, as the healing continues. So for us, the research is great. The issue comes when that research wants to be leveraged for profiteering, and then barriers to access are created, and separation from, as you said, Jesus in the wafer happens.
Right. So before we wrap up today, I kind of want to do one more fun round of things that I think people will find curious and interesting. So I'm gonna give you a prompt here that I've written down, and if you don't have a story that fits it, that's okay. Or if it's something you don't want to talk about, that's fine too. You can pass. But I think it's curious. I would like to ask each of you for a moment in a ceremony that completely blindsided you, something that you didn't expect to happen, good or bad or wild or tough, and just share a little anecdote if you have one that comes to mind. So whoever would like to go first on that, if you want to go at all.
Yeah, I'll go first, sure.
Yeah.
When you said it, I didn't even have to think about it. I was at this place that I love. It's called Rhythmia Life Advancement Center. I so appreciate the work that they do over there and could not recommend them enough. Just an amazing experience. And so I had the opportunity to be there. I was helping in one of my teacher's ceremonies. And someone says, Carlos, we need help in the bathroom. And as I'm getting there, expecting almost anything, what I didn't expect was to find a completely naked man doing a handstand over the toilet. That was a scene, right? His full moon and his hot dog stand was out and his legs were up and he was literally just handstanding over the toilet. So that for me was one of a real wild moment. I never since seen it again either, though. It's a one-time thing.
All right. Anybody else?
Man, there's a lot of different experiences that are unpredictable within this practice. I think the thing that stands out probably the most of something that's blindsided me was one time I was facilitating, and one of the participants, this woman was having a very challenging and what we call, she's like externalizing her experience. As much as we try to encourage people to have an inward journey, a lot of times people find themselves wanting to run away in some maybe not physically run away, sometimes trying to hitchhike. Sometimes I've seen that. Sometimes trying to leave, but trying to escape, but you can't escape because wherever you go, there you are.
Right.
And yeah, she was wilding out for about 3 hours. She was just screaming, "It's all love," and she was throwing shoes at me and at people and dumping water all over herself. And here I am just trying to, at this point, trying to do damage control and keep her safe, because there's a wood stove involved and she's not leaving the door, and she won't kind of take our direction to maybe go and have some water. And at one point I'm singing her, I'm basically singing directly just to her, to try to soothe her. I'm singing her a lullaby, and she's caressing my face, and she's starting to come back, and then she starts pulling my beard and biting my hand, and she afterwards thought that she was biting herself and pulling her own hair. So it was very much like a transpersonal experience. It must have been, but I was not really expecting to get so beat up in the ceremony. I've had people, not know that they're throwing elbows and things, but yeah, it was a not the way I thought that night was going to go.
Well, I keep hearing about preparation and dieta and diet and how important it is to prepare yourself to go into these ceremonies. The prep before is really essential. And this past year, what really blindsided me was, before our Sundance, we observe dieta as well. We start to fast maybe like 28 days before Sundance. We'll start to cut ourselves off of like coffee, sugar, sweets, try to get ourselves prepared for the endurance and the discipline that we're going to have to be going through. And this past year, what caught me off guard was on our first day of the Sundance, it was the last day of another Sundance on the western part of the reservation, and word was sent to our Sundance and to all of the tribe that we had a Sundancer that had passed away in the Sundance. And that just like totally blindsided me, because I'm having such a good time. Like, man, the Sundance is going good. Everyone's here. It's going wow. We did a lot of planning. It's like happening. But then I had to remember that this is life and death, that these ceremonies are life and death, and that we make that ultimate sacrifice when we do these ceremonies, that there is a chance that you might not come out. There is a chance that, it could happen, and any one of us could pass away wherever we are. You could pass away on the pooper, or you could pass away in airplane or wherever. But what blindsided me was that this man was the same age as me, and he had a family and he had children that he left behind. But in our way, we say that he made the biggest sacrifice. He made the ultimate sacrifice for us as Sundance people, and he passed away an honorable death, dancing for the people and dancing for his family and for himself. And we took that really, really hard, because we Sundance for life, and his life ended so that his children's life could continue on, his family. But there was a lot of misconception, misunderstanding, a lot of blame on the spiritual community. Why didn't we do anything? Why didn't the leaders prevent this from happening? But that preparation is very key to these ceremonies and holding that space. So that was something that really woke me up to being humble and to remain that, the Creator could call you wherever you are.
Well, I want to talk a little bit more about that, because, we've had some anecdotes here that are kind of funny, and we've had some anecdotes that are kind of tragic.
Yeah.
And, and I think that is ammunition that someone might hear and say, well, this is dangerous, or it's not well understood, and this is why we need to do this kind of research and all of those things. And maybe those are valid points. But I definitely want to highlight something here. Like you said, the way your community is viewing that poor man's death. And of course, he'd done multiple sun dances in a row, if I understand it. I mean, he's under extreme physical duress. I mean, this is not anything that's unique to this one practice, even though it is very brutal. It is a very hard practice, but it's beautiful in its own way. And that man, like you said, he gave his ultimate sacrifice to those folks. To that man, I am sure that his death had meaning. In that moment that he left this world, he probably understood it within that context. And I'd also like to contrast that by the fact that the current status quo modality that we have access to, where we are trying to heal people that are also in incredibly dark places that are struggling, or to give them fucking pills that increase their own suicidal ideation. And I'm here to tell you, we've had 156,000 veterans that have taken their own lives since 9/11. And that's a true fact. That's a hell of a lot more people than one guy that died with some kind of meeting at a Sundance. And what was the value in the modalities that those people that were engaging in these antidepressants that have these comorbidities or these problems with suicidal ideation as a side effect? Where's the value and the beauty in that? And so that would be my response to anyone that wants to go and pick bones. I mean, I'd much rather come in and see a guy's butt and hot dog above a toilet, or let somebody pull my beard, as opposed to have to bury another one of my friends that was seeking out help and desperately seeking help, only to be let down by the very people that have an oath to care for he who has borne the battle in his widow and his orphan. We are not doing enough. We are not doing it right. And then we have these other beautiful practices that we know do work and do heal, and with a lot better survival rate than what we have currently. So before we wrap up the show, I'd like to have one more discussion here for all of you. What I would ask is, I would love for you guys to ask the other from the different lineage something that you'd like to know about their practices that maybe you don't fully understand or you're curious about, or maybe you want to zero in on a point to try to draw a topic up, if that would be okay with you all. Whoever would like to start.
It's a great question.
That is a really good question.
Yeah, I gotta think about the question. Yeah, okay. I have a question for Jalen. The 4 doors that are part of the sweat. What does each door represent?
The first door represents the first direction, and that represents the west. And the west is really significant to the thunder beings, and that's where the thunder beings live, and that's our first direction. And all creation of life has lightning in it, has electricity in it, has power. And even us, we have a little bit of electricity in us, and it makes our heart go, every day. And that's the first direction. And the animal is the horse that stands in that direction. And then over here to the north represents the Buffalo Nation, and that's our second direction. And the Buffalo Nation is also represented by the women. And maybe you've all heard about the white buffalo calf, or the prophecy of the white buffalo calf woman. She brought our ceremonies to us, and it was through the white buffalo that we received our most sacred rites and our most sacred ceremonies. And it was through the women that brought us the ceremony, a sacred woman. And so she is represented over here by the Buffalo Nation. And then over here, the third door, the third round, the third direction would be the elk, or the deer nation. And they are also the healers and the protectors of the women and the sustainers of life. And they stand in that direction. And then finally over here, off into fourth direction, represents the white owl. And that represents the elite warriors back long time ago, you see our chiefs, they wear headdresses like with the eagle feathers. The elite warriors didn't wear eagle feathers. They wore owl feather headdresses because the owl flew at night and he was able to turn his head all the way around and see. So you couldn't trap him like an eagle. You know, our people, they would trap these birds and use the feathers, but you can't trap an owl. You know, and he flies silent and he works at night. And that is represented by the fourth door. And so those are the significance of the 4 rounds. And the first round, we call it the invocation or the calling round. And then the second round is called the prayer round, where each individual gets to say their prayer out loud. You know, we'll go around clockwise. And then the third round is the doctoring round or the hospital round, you know, where we get healing. You know, the grandfathers, you know, bless us, the grandmothers, the stones, the heat. And then finally, the last round is the thank you round. So to say thank you and to say wopila to the grandfathers and to the elements. And that's the representation of what I was told and how I carry it.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
I got a question for you, Carlos. How does your lineage view the different qualities of the different types of vine?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. So for us, we work in 3 realms. There's the celestial realm, where the lord of that realm is seen as the macaw, the ara. Then we have the terrestrial realm, where the lord is the jaguar. And then we have the water world or the underworld, where the lord there is the anaconda or the boa. And so we classify the different vines according to one of these 3 realms. It's either celestial, terrestrial, or water from the underworld. And so that would be the general. And then it's subclassified into an animal that it's connected with. So celestial vines would be connected with like the hummingbird or the owl or the macaw, for example. Perennial vines would be the tiger vine is one example. There's one called a spider vine that we have, or the monkey vine as well. And then you have the water world vines, which are associated typically with types of snakes, the boa, for example, or anaconda. And that's the way that we classify them. And then the way that is explained is the experience, right? The journey, it goes through the celestial frequencies, the earth frequencies, or the water frequencies.
Beautiful. Thanks for sharing.
My pleasure.
Yeah, we drawing from the Andean cosmology, we have a very similar 3 realm, the Hanak Pacha, which is the upper realm, which is the condor, and then the Kaipacha, which is the Otorongo, the jaguar, which is the kind of the earth realm that we inhabit, and then the Ukupacha, the underworld, which is the anaconda.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just different birds, you know?
Yeah,
They got
yeah.
the mountain, they got the condor up in the mountains and the canyons and stuff. And
But it's earth, sky,
Yeah.
earth, and water.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
If you were to take these different, and I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I misunderstood, but there's different vines that you're associating with these cosmological references. So is there, if you're shooting for more of a cosmic experience, are you using that vine? And if you're looking more for an underworld, you're using that vine? Or is that over reading into it?
The medicine's really unpredictable and it varies person to person. So I think you can try to shoot for a specific type of outcome within the context of a specific recipe for a brew, but it's not that straightforward. It's really up to the medicine, and the spirits and the energy that's coming through there. It's really not, those are kind of good guidelines, but yeah, you're going to get thrown some curveballs. You're like, yeah, we're going to have some, light, airy angel beings. And you're like, nope, you're getting,
You're going to go to the hospital.
yeah, you're going to get steamrolled sometimes.
It's a reminder that everything's connected.
Yeah.
It's not just one way. It's never just one way in nature.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jalen?
I was sitting here thinking, I'll ask this for Carlos. Will Will was saying that, in your ceremonies that you almost become the spirit. You almost you go into this trance, and I always kept thinking about this. I was like, I wonder how brother looks when he's in this trance, or I wonder if he's really scary, or he's really macho.
I think what he's referring to, Carlos, is the fact that you're the funniest, most gentle, lovable man I've ever met. In the middle of ceremony, I think you're a caveman Neanderthal that's there to beat away whatever may plague you.
And
I think that's what he's talking about.
So is that like a form of masculinity that goes along with the ceremony, or is that part of the teachings? Because I know in our way we have the same way too, where we kind of start to maybe we might imitate a bear and start to growl around and rah, and kind of become that spirit animal, or we might feel like we have the wings of an eagle, make some eagle noises, And so I was in relation to that, I was like, I wonder if he's channeling,
I would say that in that moment, the idea, the prayer, is to be an instrument. And the hope is to drink enough medicine where my mind isn't there, but rather just an openness to connect and allow the spirits of nature, the spirits of the ancestors, to work through this body. And I think by nature I'm loud and rambunctious, So, I think what I've come to understand is that you're right. You learn that each facilitator has their own method. It's their own way of doing it. You have the foundation, and then there's what you do with that. And I think because of my nature of being loud, rambunctious, the medicine and the ancestors have fun with me because I'm not scared to get loud, and I enjoy it. I like feeling the energy and shaking it up. And so I think because I like it and I'm open to it, it uses me in that way, and we have fun with it.
I like that.
I think a safety briefing might be helpful ahead of that. So I know, because that's really unsettling when that just happens out of left field, much like the King Nettles. But yes, that's a different story for a different time and an amazing experience on its own. So, well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining today. And, if you guys are available and open to it, I think once we drop this podcast, I'd love to set up an X Spaces conversation to kind of maybe pick this conversation back up. And I'd invite all of you at home that may be watching this podcast to join us on our X account at GruntStyleFDN. It's Foxtrot Delta November, GruntStyle FDN. And we'll do X Spaces with these guys and invite everybody to come on and ask your own questions that you may have of this incredible wisdom that's here with my three Magi friends that happen to be sitting at this table. And please follow us on all of our other social media avenues. We're on YouTube at GruntStyle Foundation, which is where you can also find us on Instagram as well as Facebook. And follow us along on AmericanGrit.com. This content will also be there, and there's all other sorts of good things. If this is the first time you're coming into the Grunt Style Land orbit by way of this conversation, there's all sorts of interesting things there for your viewing pleasure and education. It's a fascinating conversation, guys, and I appreciate greatly your willingness to come in and share. This is not a conversation that I've ever seen anywhere on the internet like this anyway. And I want to wrap this thing up by something that comes from, or it's relayed by a lady named Molly Larkin, and she's the co-author of the international bestseller, The Wind is My Mother, The Life and Teachings of a Native American Shaman. So this is, as Molly relays it, a prophecy of Crazy Horse that was passed on by Chief Joe Chasing Horse, who was the relative of the great Lakota warrior Crazy Horse. And this is really where this goes. And this speaks to me very deeply and it's informed a lot of the work that we do, and it's what gives me so much pride, I guess, working with you folks out in Pine Ridge, Jay. So I'm gonna read this prophecy as it's come to me. Upon suffering, beyond suffering, the red nation shall rise again, and it shall be a blessing for a sick world. A world filled with broken promises, selfishness, and separations. A world longing for light again. I see a time in 7 generations when all of the colors of mankind will gather under the sacred tree of life, and the whole earth will become one circle again. In that day there will be those among the Lakota who will carry knowledge and understanding of unity among all living things, and the young white ones will come to those of my people and ask for this wisdom. I salute the light within your eyes where the whole universe dwells. For when you are at that center within you, and I am in that place within me, we shall be as one. So
That's true.
thank you all for that. We'll see you again next time, folks, here at the Triangular Compass and the American Grit Podcast. All of these things, you can find us again at AmericanGrit.com, at GruntStyleFoundation.org. And as my friend Tim Jensen would say, be kind to everybody, wash your stinking hands, and we'll see you next time. The Grunt Style Foundation continues fighting for those who have served. Support our mission at GruntStyleFoundation.org/donate. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and keep moving forward with purpose.